Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Systems Thinking Discourse with Funmilola. I use these opportunities to have a practical lens to the topic of system thinking, a very powerful tool that's already been recognized as one of the skills of the future, especially in an increasingly interconnected world where actions in one field sphere of influence has significant knock-on effects on other elements in other places. So, what is system thinking? Before we go into the definition of system thinking, today I will be talking about the power of leverage that systems thinking provides. And you wonder why leverage, what has that got to do with system thinking? Hold that thought. Just as a bit of a recap, I shared in a different video what systems thinking is, but it's really a big picture mentality, a structured big picture thinking that enables you to analyze complex systems, complex interactions, complex entities, complex socio-technical type interactions to be able to evaluate the behavior of a bigger whole by understanding not just the parts that make up the whole, but the interactions between the part and between the broader environment where that system is in, that then drives the behaviors of the system that is in question. And these systems, range from the human body as a system, policies as a system, a country as a system, an organization as a system, relationships, and what any kind of interaction that drives towards a purpose is what I consider in this conversation a system. And so when I say system, I'm not talking computer systems only, because yes, it does apply, but I'm talking about fundamentally an interaction between entities as part of a bigger whole where the sum of the parts is less than the whole. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, essentially. All right, so yeah, for me, why should I care? Why should I care about systems thinking? I talk about the power the system thinking brings to help you optimize, make a good system get better, identify issues with an existing system, or just craft a new one that's effective by understanding how it interacts with other parts of a bigger system that system is in, but also how the subcomponents of that system work together to make this system function to deliver the anticipated behaviors or function while eliminating or anticipating what would typically be considered an unanticipated behavior of that system. In English, it helps you get ahead, stay ahead of some of the seeming surprises that you could get from the complex socio-technical systems in and around you. So today, what am I talking about when I talk about leverage? System thinking is just system thinking for itself. The reason why it's important is that the more you understand the system that you're talking about, the policy, your organization, the subset of your organization, the relationships, whatever it is that you're evaluating, the more you're able to understand it, you're able to understand how the parts interact, it gives you a sense of leverage. Leverage is that place or that point in your system where the smallest efforts bring about bigger, outcomes that are scaled significantly above whatever effort that you're putting in. Kind of like the simple lever that we talk about in science, where you apply a little bit of force and you're able to lift something big because you're multiplying the effect of that force that you have applied. In an article I read by Donella Meadows, somebody who's sort of attributed to be one of the staunch proponents of system thinking, she talked about leverage points in any system and kind of started from the least effective to the most effective ones. And as I was reading through some of that content, what came to mind for me is sort of how you show up at the doctor's office with a fever, like you're running the temperature, and the first thing the doctor does is to say, let's bring the temperature down. It says, let's bring it down because you don't want the body, the system, to spiral out of control, right? Because once things kind of go beyond certain breaking points, then it becomes a bigger issue to manage. However, that does not solve the problem that of whatever necessitated the fever. Hence, the doctor starts to do, diagnosis. What have you been up to? Where have you been? Who have you spoken to? Who did you interact with? Does a couple of tests to make sure that he's able, or he or she is able to address the root cause of whatever is causing the issue that you're dealing with. Because that's when really you can say maybe treat the bacterial infection, say with an antibiotics, and then the fever comes down. Otherwise, what you're going to continue to do is to continue to treat the symptoms of the fever by lowering your temperature, and ultimately that does not solve the problem by actually resulting to something bigger. This is why those who sell those medications will tell you, if the symptoms don't go away after X number of days, consult your doctor. Which brings me to the topic of this whole point around system thinking and leverage. Often we have this issue that we're dealing with that seems to be showing up in multiple places, or just seems too hard a nut to crack. And while we've mastered the art of solving the symptoms, we're probably making the issue worse because we're not addressing the root cause. Similar to the analogy that I just described by the doctor. And so the weakest point, or the least effective way in a system, is to look at those variables that you can tweak here and there, the quick system issues, organizational type stuff. Let's solve this problem by maybe giving this incentive, and then hopefully it goes away. Now, if you're not careful, you make the matter worse. It gets better in the interim and only continues to get worse in the future, which is why system thinking is important for leverage, because it tells you for leverage, because it helps you identify where's the most effective place. What's the bacteria thing we're treating here? Where should I be using an antibiotics, or should I be using something else? Should this person be going for some immediate surgery just because this is probably a symptom of something else? But then you need to know what exactly you're dealing with. Now, as you go down the scale of the items that Daniela identifies as leverage, how you can increase your leverage in the system. One of the points that, caught my attention was the fact that, the constraints and the system, the more you can identify what the constraints are, the more power that you have over the system, the more a little change in those constraints, take a critical blockage out of the way, an organizational barrier out of the way, some clarity that people need out of the way, the easier for you to then solve other issues, because then the multiplier effect is high. And so in my mind, I think about, one of those days recently, I was using the Google Maps to go on a journey, right? And usually Google Map is programmed to get you the fastest route to where you're going to. So there might be other options, but it'll tell you this is the fastest for where you're going to. You can choose to go somewhere else, but it'll give you the options. However, there are times when there are options where you can say, please avoid tolls, or please avoid highways. And so from time to time, we would use the avoid tollway, because again, we're trying to save money on tolls. And sometimes the difference between your tollway and the regular route is probably maybe 2, 3, 5 minutes. And if I'm not in a hurry, 5 minutes is not a big deal. So, okay, here comes the constraint. Please avoid tollways. But then we get on this particular day and we're in a hurry. Now we didn't remember to take the avoid tollway off of the map. So the rule of the system here is, please get us to the fastest destination, fastest route that gets us to our destination on time. But because we've added this constraint of avoid tollway, we knew where we were going to. We're used to this route, and so we decided to go through the tollway route. And as soon as we got on the tollway, which was supposed to be a detour for the Google Maps, it then recalculated. But the interesting thing for us was that because we've told it to avoid the tollway, it recalculated for us to get off the tollway at the next available exit, which added probably another 5 minutes to the journey. And so we have overridden the primary goal of this Google Map by telling it to avoid tollways. And so if we think about how does this apply to you, how does this apply to your organization? What are those constraints that you have put in place where, while your organizational goals says X, the constraints you've put in place helps people, guides them away from your objectives because, well, this is telling them you cannot do this. This does not work here. This is not the preferred mode to do this. And so, as you think through your system in question, relationships, policies, you must always be able to analyze and say, what is driving what? What rules may have put in place that may be counterproductive to the original objective that we're trying to achieve? Well, back to my Google Maps story. We kept going on this day and we skipped the first exit, and then it recalculated and calculated the next exit on this tollway that we needed to get off of to get us to our destination. And I'm like, Google Map, what's going on? And then, it was interesting. Of course, I knew what was going on, but it was just interesting to see how it still did not choose to give us the now quicker routes, which we were already on anyways, because we had put constraints in place to override the original objective of the fastest route. So it was giving us the fastest route with a constraint in place. So how do I tie this back to the topic of leverage? There's so many times this looks like a straightforward example. You can just go straight into the Google Map and unclick what you've clicked, and yeah, that's it. It gets us back to the quicker route and gets us to our destination. If we did not know where we were going to on this particular day, even if we had mistakenly stumbled on the toll, Google was going to direct us away from it because the objective that we have put, the constraints, was telling Google Map that you shouldn't be here. You should be somewhere, you should be taking another route to that destination. And so the leverage that system thinking gives you is your ability to really understand what's going on. That's the first point of leverage. To see what all else is driving what is going on. How might I tweak this such that if I solve this one thing, if I use this antibiotics, then the fever comes down or the shivering goes down, and so I don't now have to be dealing continuously with a shiver because now I have addressed the root cause of the issue. And the only way you can understand the root cause is to see what all else is contributing to the behavior that we're seeing. The iceberg model is a very, typical example that is used, or a tool that is used in systems thinking. And so the more you can double click and deep dive into the structures that hold these patterns that you're seeing in place, the mindsets that hold things in place, the higher the leverage that you have to make big changes with really smaller efforts. Because sometimes the answers to what we're looking for, the answers to the challenges that we have, sometimes are not the real complex things. Because yes, they have now multiplied into the complex issues that we need to first manage the temperature on, manage the organizational behaviors you're seeing, manage the policy thing that is going on. But you cannot stop at the management space, because if you continue to be in the let's manage this, you lose out on the opportunity to stop an issue that is becomingly increasingly worse, because you're solving the temperature issue until maybe the bacteria gets to a critical organ, and then suddenly another symptom shows up because we didn't deal with it before it spread to the point where it was beyond remedy. And so that is the power of system thinking. Your ability to stop, look at your system, look at what drives the behaviors of your system, think about the components of your system, think about the environment in your system. So somebody during the COVID era, one of the first things you start to ask is, where have you been? Who have you been in contact with? Who did you interact with? Because that might be the first signal of what you're presenting, so that you can eliminate other potential diseases and get to treating as fast as possible. If you bring that mindset to some of the endemic or issues that you see in your current space, you might be getting the power of leverage that system thinking provides. Want to know more about this? Comment in the chat and tell me what example you'd like us to apply system thinking to. I'll be excited to oblige you and have a conversation around system thinking. Till the next edition of Systems Thinking Discourse with Funmi, I would say, what are you applying system thinking to? Look around you. There's so many opportunities out there. Let's take control. Let's provide leverage by using a powerful tool of thinking systemically and applying it to the systems, biological, physical, socio-technical, all around us. The world needs a lot more system thinker. Are you getting on board? Comment in the chat and let me know.